Greetings, this is Bryan Hudson, and welcome to another Conversations in Focus. It's been a while since we have hosted a Conversation in Focus episode and podcast, and I'm very pleased to be back as we're now emerging from the pandemic. And about that, let me say, let's continue to be vigilant, get your vaccinations, get boosted. Let's do all the best practices we've learned during the difficult days of COVID. This program and podcast concept is very simple. I want to bring people who are making a difference and having positive impact in our community and in God's kingdom. There's a link to the previous conversations in focus in the notes of this program and podcast. I am very pleased to welcome to this new season of Conversations in Focus a public health professional, a cancer survivor, a dear friend, and a first-time author, Judith Warren. Welcome, Judy.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
All right. Her new book is entitled More Than a Conqueror, My Journey Through Breast Cancer. Here's a brief bio from the back of her book. Judith Warren, MPH, which is Master of Public Health, is founder and principal consultant for Ascentia Strategies, LLC, which she established after a 40-year career serving in senior leadership positions in the public health, community-based health nonprofit, and private philanthropy sectors. As a breast cancer survivor, she is equally passionate about supporting and mentoring women, promoting awareness and eliminating barriers to access and quality health care. Once again, I say welcome, Judy, to this conversation.
Thank you. It's great to be here and to be able to share some thoughts and reflections today.
All right, the book was released in January of this year, and now that it has reached the hands and hearts of many people, what's been the response to your book?
The response has been really great. First of all, it brought me front and center on Facebook, which I was not an avid reader, nor certainly posting anything on Facebook. So I reached out to my initial circle, my college classmates, some of the people that I've worked with over the years, and the response was just great. Surprising to many that I had written a book because I did not share widely that I was writing it. And some people didn't even know that I had gone through breast cancer. So the response has been great. It's opened doors for me. People have gifted the book to other women that they know that are experiencing or going through this dealing with this disease. So it's really been an opportunity to share a message and to share, hopefully, hope and information.
That's great. Talk about your travels related to your book
Yeah.
signings and sharing your message of being more than a conqueror.
Sure. So the first travels that where I launched was in Cincinnati. My sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, hosted my first book signing. And I traveled over to Indianapolis, and you were open your doors at New Covenant to host a book signing there, and even just talking one-on-one with women and those who attended. I got to meet with some other friends, connect with friends and who were buying books. And then I've been to Nashville, Tennessee to a women's retreat. So I've kind of had the opportunity to get out and connect with women, meet women, some who were in healthcare themselves, some who were relatives of a family member going through breast cancer treatment and or recent diagnosis. So it's really been more surprising because I didn't know what to expect when I wrote the book. And then to just see how God has moved, I really have not sought out too many opportunities to speak. I've shared with people, close friends, colleagues, that I've written a book, and then they'll say, oh, well, come to South Carolina, come to Texas. And so it's just really been organic, and I know God has provided the path.
That's great. I thought it was really great that the pandemic's winding down just at the time, right, where the book was released and
Yeah,
you could travel
yeah,
to
yeah,
present in
yeah,
person. Yes. Now, early in your
yeah.
treatment and recovery process, you kept a journal. And in fact, you brought that
Hmm.
journal to the book signing at New Covenant Church. And I was pretty amazed
Hmm.
to see that. Talk about the helpfulness of journaling through your journey.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been a journaler for many years. I've always been a note taker when I was in services or listening to any messages. But the journal, is also, the good old days used to be called a diary. And then I think they wanted to make it more non-age specific and call it now a journal to write down your thoughts and your feelings and just notes along the way. So the journal for me, was a very helpful record because you can't keep all this information in your head. You can't, remember everything. If you want to go back and say what happened last week or 2 weeks ago, or just what's going on. So the journal was a big step for me because when I came to the point of knowing that I wanted to write a book, I had something to capture and to refresh my memory. So for me, it was a great way to capture my whole experience during that time. And remember people that I wanted to thank, that I wanted to acknowledge and appreciate.
Talking about the book, More Than a Conqueror, My Journey Through Breast Cancer by Judith Warren. Want to ask Judy, and there are many books on from breast cancer survivors, and how is your book different? Now, all the books are important, I know, but how is your book different from other books you may have read from other survivors?
Sure. So thanks. I did a little research around that because I did want to, not that to say, everybody has, when you look at all the books in the bookstore, you'll see there's a biography or autobiography from a number of people, about a number of people. And I looked at what was available on the shelf in the bookstores, and it was limited. It was more from the whole medical clinical piece, or if it was written by a clinician maybe that was also diagnosed. So they had kind of a blend from that clinical perspective. And then some other books that I found online, may have told a kind of a short story. But I wanted to bring together the medical, the personal, and the spiritual aspects of it. Because as we know, we are a three-part being, mind, soul, body, spirit. I wanted to also bring that together as I brought it together in my book.
As your former pastor and a longtime friend, I'm aware of your 40-year career in public health in senior leadership positions. You are a master of public health, MPH. So, from that perspective, and as a public health professional, not only from the emotional perspective as a survivor, what do you say to a woman who has been diagnosed with cancer?
Two short messages are one, don't go alone, and secondly, don't delay. Um, it's been surprising to me to learn about the number of women. Of course, fear kind of can be a first reaction, and so the fear causes delay. Um, a person didn't cause cancer. Cancer is the development of rogue, harmful cells within a person's body. So no one did anything to typically cause this disease, but you don't go alone, you don't delay, you get all your questions answered, you find and try to get the best support you can, and that learn about the resources. And those are things that I wanted to talk about in my book. It includes like a checklist of help, of finding a physician. Don't go to a doctor and commit to a relationship with that doctor if you feel that you won't be supported. It's okay to interview a physician. Usually the white coat or the degrees can be intimidating for some. But you have the right and you deserve the right. A person deserves the right to get the best care possible. So I have checklists in there. I have questions that a person can ask, and to just know that more resources are out there now. And that's another thing that I wanted to impart with the book in terms of awareness of understanding the issue now that has surfaced is the challenge that women are experiencing finding payment for confirmation diagnoses such as the mammogram, not the mammogram, the MRI, or biopsies, or more complete and precise procedures for confirming a diagnosis of what stage of the cancer, the type of tumor, and so forth. But there are resources out there now. So it's researching those things and finding someone or an organization that can help and support you. It's so important and critical because delay can mean more complex treatment that can be required. It can mean that there's more strain on a family, on an individual with their budget, with prolonged treatment. And so the earlier, it's always prevention is better than having to go through, more extensive treatment. But we aren't saying you can't necessarily, they haven't found a way yet to prevent cancer, but don't delay, don't go alone.
Very, very profound words, and don't delay, do not go alone. Again, we're talking about the book by Judith Warren, More Than a Conqueror, My Journey Through Breast Cancer. Let me say, it is as much a handbook as a testimony. And as we've already discussed, Judith is a healthcare professional and in the public sector and private sector. And as such, she goes into great detail on how to approach a diagnosis of cancer and to walk through that process. So now you've been cancer free for 20 years. This is the year you told me, this is the 20th year of being cancer free. Yeah, praise
Yes.
God for that. So what are some keys besides the grace of God and great medical care to remaining healthy all of these years?
Yeah, so again, we always talk about, making those adjustments in our lifestyle and so forth. But that was one place where I knew I had to start just because of the side effects and reactions that a person's body goes through when you're going through chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, and then even after that, 5 years of additional medication. So self-care became important. I had to learn how to bring more balance. What's known now, the famous phrase work-life balance, but just kind of dialing down on some things and just pausing on other things. So self-care was important. Modifying my diet, pulling out red meat, reducing caffeine, just making those healthier choices that can help prolong and keep me in a state of wellness.
Now let's talk about the faith component of your journey. You don't hide the fact that you love the Lord and He helped you and He's shown you mercy. And we know as Christ followers, there is some tension and skepticism regarding the practice of faith as it relates to real life issues. So what are some of the ways in which the Lord has helped you survive cancer and navigate this journey?
Sure. So I think it gave me more boldness with sharing and with trusting God through this process. It's always, the phrase, your test leads to a testimony, or, it's God puts our faith to the test to see how much we're going to stand and acknowledge His word. And I didn't hesitate first to get a prayer circle because I needed to have reinforcements for myself when I was too tired physically, emotionally, to be strong. Um, it's not, I'm not trying to be a superwoman or anything, but the faith and the grace of God to have people around me was important, and also just to also consider interviewing or asking when you're talking with your medical providers, kind of get a sense of, who they are and what they believe and what's coming out of their mouth, to keep the negativity away from you. And so those were important things that I lifted up and had to put to practice.
I noticed also that in your book, you've got, following many chapters, something called Daily Dose. What's that about?
So the daily dose, like we say, take your vitamins every day, eat an apple a day, keep the doctor away. I felt that a daily dose would just be a nice moment to lift up or include a scripture, include an inspirational word, to have something to stand on and to show that God's word is real and it applies, and it can just speak in the word can just bring peace sometimes and just remind you that you're not alone. You have a spiritual covering, and that the word is to be practical in our lives. It's not just to be, in a book on a table or by the bedside. It's to live and speak the word.
That's what struck me also about your book is you've got this balance of professional approach, respect for medical science, strong faith in
Mhm.
God, and there's no conflict between those. And of course, we're putting
It
God
is.
first, especially. Yeah. So talk about sometimes you had to make decisions and pray over what you were told. How important is it to be in charge of your own process?
Oh, I think it's very critical because we are the person that things are happening to. This was happening to me. And so I can appreciate, the information, take it all in. I'm always one to kind of verify facts. Some physicians now are clinicians, they're kind of leery of patients that come in with printouts of information of what they've learned online, as that they may not trusting or listening to only what that person is saying in front of you. So I think it's really important to be in charge and to not, again, just not being intimidated, and getting every question answered. Um, Even when I've learned, I've also started the practice of, if they're talking about a medical term that I'm not familiar with, have them spell it, have them write it down for you, and check it out when you get home so that a person is fully informed of what's going to happen and the consequences. Another thing that I learned along the way that's kind of coming to my mind now too is like, what is the treatment plan? What is the goal or the outcome that we are expecting? So a person can prepare, mentally, um, kind of target your prayers to direct to that point of, here's what we want to have come out of this. Here's what I'm expecting to happen. And things may not always fall in place. There can be, to just say this is not, a walk in the park where everything may go according to schedule, but, at least you'll be somewhat prepared and aware.
That's great. And again, we're talking about the book More Than a Conqueror by Judith Warren, My Journey Through Breast Cancer. In fact, the subtitle here says Insights, Awareness, Inspiration. And so I would add, in addition to this being a book of testimony and medical journey, it is also a devotional as well. And so blending the faith with the expertise of medical science with the Lord, it really, I can see it helped you. 20 years later, here we're having a conversation about it.
Well, just one thing that's coming to mind as you were saying is the devotional is that I include in the book a prayer that I wrote as I was preparing for treatment. Because I just believe in the power of God's word and the covering that can provide. And so I wanted to just share in my book what was given to me, what I developed as kind of my cookbook, my recipe, my game plan for getting through this time in my life.
Outstanding. And I again want to say, here we are 20 years later, and the game plan, God blessed it. He honored it, and he's still honoring it, right?
Yeah,
All right.
yes,
Let's
yes.
switch gears here, talk about your journey as an author, okay? First time author. And I thought about this. You've had, the experience of surviving cancer, an experience of writing a book. Now, there's obviously no relationship. I mean, one of them was life-threatening, the other is not. But besides that fact, what similarities were there between the journey through cancer and writing a book? Again, these are very, very different things, I know. But were there any
Yeah.
parallels between those two?
One parallel that I find is they were both unknowns to me. Uh, didn't know what to expect going through cancer, the diagnosis. Didn't know what the path would take me, or how the path would evolve with writing a book. So both took. That was a kind of a first time, obviously there. And other similarities was just getting the information, learning what to do as a person diagnosed with cancer, and what to do in preparation for writing a book.
Now, most people dream about writing a book. And, you've written one, I've written 12 now. But what do you think are some of the roadblocks to getting a book written?
Yeah, so I never expected to even be an author, really. I would write, obviously journaling and so forth. But roadblocks could be procrastination. It's easily, we can put off a lot of things every day and just say, I'll get to it tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. So that could be a roadblock to just getting started. And then maybe comparing yourself to a number one bestseller. Looking at people such as yourself that have written 12 books and others, books that people have read, and wanting to write in that voice or write with that type of style. And that's just, then it won't really be an authentic book for you. And I think it's also sticking with the story. My book is not a long book. It's not a thick book, but I think it's packed with good information and a good read. And so you stick with the story. You don't try to, once you told your story, then end it. Don't try to add on more than what a person needs to experience in reading a book.
Yes, and I would add to that the simple fact of getting into it. And you have that journal. And I would always say, don't make the first thing you write a book. Work on your journal.
Yeah,
Share your
yeah,
thoughts in a blog
yeah.
post or write it down for yourself. Make notes, because writing is, all of us can write and read, and we become better just by doing it. And so the first thing
Yeah.
you write should not be a book, okay? I think, so your journaling, your professional work, you've written grants, you've written books, just none that could be published.
Yeah, yeah, and don't be afraid to share it with someone
Yes,
once you get it out there. Because as you said, don't let the first thing you write be a book, and don't think that the first version of what you write is the final book.
right. So true.
Be be open for someone's review and to give you, input. Are they getting out of it what you want a person to get out of it?
Yes. So, and also I would add one caveat. Share it with an encouraging person who will tell you the truth. Some people are
Yeah,
not very encouraging. So find an
that's
encouraging
true.
person who will tell you the truth.
Yeah,
That's harder than
yes.
it might seem sometime.
I can remember two or three people that I asked, good friends, colleagues, that I wanted to just kind of read the first draft just to see, where I was headed. And, then you find out, oh, nobody has time. Well, how long is it? When do you need it back? So I just continued really to pray and just kind of go through my mental Rolodex to find a couple of people that I could trust, and like you said, would be an encourager. And they were just excellent, in pointing out to me how I could elaborate on certain points that I mentioned and how I needed to, maybe consider incorporating something. So it did take a minute,
Yes.
to find those two or three people that had the time and you could trust with your birthing this baby.
So true. And that is in itself a roadblock, right? Not that people aren't willing, just aren't able. And that takes time to
Yeah,
find only a few people who can help you.
yeah.
Now, let me ask you this on following on to the process of getting a book written. What are some good habits and best practices that help you keep your writing on track?
One thing when I decided to do this, first I had to clear my calendar a little bit because I can, as we all can, be busy. You can find things to fill your day with. But I wanted to be purposeful and reach my goal, complete my goal. So I blocked out time on my calendar. I'm fortunate enough now to be retired, or as some people say, rewired now, from a 40-hour week to flexible with some of the projects that I'm still working on, and so I could commit the time in my schedule to write, which would mean that I would kind of keep my momentum going. So that was one of the first things, and then also to have a mentor who is another author who gave me some good input, and to have an advisor such as yourself to help me find the right resources, and also to check out people's references. All editors, I can truly testify to this, that all editors are not the same. And editing does not mean formatting the book, it means editing the book.
Yes.
And catching and catching things that if I catch it and you don't catch it, then, and having a budget, because none of this is free.
Yes, and we did discuss this. Your book, we help you publish your book. It is a self published work, only in the sense that we help you to help to get the book produced for you. We didn't finance the project for you, but helped you,
Mhm.
to get all the pieces in place, which is the way almost
Yes.
all first time authors have to work. We can't. People go out thinking, "Well, I'm going to present my manuscript to Random House," and being unrealistic about it. Now, self-publishing, there's no stigma to it now. It is a great way to get your message out there, and really, many times books are picked up by bigger publishers once they see success. So there's no shame in that. But you told me yesterday one of your mentors mentioned you about the method of writing. Talk about that method where you don't labor over, don't stop, just keep going. Talk about that. You mentioned that yesterday to me.
Sure. Yes, it is, because that can be a stumbling block. You can get, a brain freeze with the words just aren't coming. But just get it out. Again, my journal helped me to be sure to capture points that I wanted to include, details that I wanted to include, but just get it on paper. And because the first read or the first version is not the final copy. So let's not, be disillusioned to think that we're all Pulitzer Prize writers, but that just get it on paper and see how it flows. Is it hard for Or would it be hard for a reader to go from point A to point B to the next point? So yeah, just get it out and don't be intimidated by trying to pull it all together the first time.
And that's one of the things I was really pleased with. That goes to your background as a professional in writing grants and reports and all the rest. You're a very good writer. And in fact, you are better than the editors. A couple editors you ran across, you were better than them, you know.
Yeah,
So
yes, yeah.
so I just appreciate your effort, Judy, on this book. Again, we're talking about the book by Judith Warren, More Than a Conqueror, My Journey Through Breast Cancer. Matter of fact, I'm going to scroll up here on the screen the chapter. You see the chapter title scrolling up on the screen there. It's a very thorough book. It is a book of testimony. It's a handbook, very practical how-to steps, and also a devotional as well. And I encourage you to go to Amazon.com. Just type in More Than a Conqueror. It's available in print edition and also in Kindle ebook edition. So be sure to check that out today. And you have, if you're Amazon Prime, you'll have a book tomorrow if you order today or 2 days. What are some other keys to getting that manuscript ready to submit for publishing?
Sure. So I think it's really kind of understanding what the role is of the publisher in terms of getting it to production, getting it to print. And you have to set up your account for business account, and keeping that really, if a person can, separate that from your personal. Because obviously seed money is needed, which will come from personal funds, but just in terms of the accounting part. So going through that whole piece of registering, your company was helpful in getting my ISBN, which is the International Universal System for registering a book. And so that was very helpful. But getting the business account set up with the publisher and just kind of really becoming familiar with their process for tracking for payment, understanding what your net profit is going to be for each book in terms of which helps with the pricing of the book, and just learning all those details and then managing that and really staying on top of that, because I had a few hiccups with the publisher. At first was just setting up my business account for them to submit my royalty payments. So that was a little nerve-wracking, but we got through that bump in the road. And so now everything runs pretty smoothly, and I can track the transactions and the payments and understand that a royalty check won't come every Friday. So don't expect to get paid every week. That timeline as well. And just making sure that you can have books, an author can have books on hand, because pretty much everyone wants a signed copy. And so to know that an author would be involved in signing those copies and then shipping them out.
Yes, and you've described, again, the self-publishing process. Again, we helped you do that. But the beauty of self-publishing is you reap the profits. Although
Yes.
you have the headache of managing everything else as well. But in traditional publishing, they'll pay you in advance, and you get paid a small royalty but they get most of the profits. Whereas when you self-publish, you reap the profits when books sell. Now, of course, the question is, when do they forward my profits to me? When do I get my money? Right? But again, looking at the whole process, I'm just very happy, Judy, in how you have triumphed, over cancer. You triumphed in getting a book done, and now you're traveling and spreading this good message.
Well, I just wanted to definitely acknowledge you and your family, your wife Patricia, for all the years of having a pastoral covering and for walking with me, being patient with me, walking through this journey and continuing to encourage me because that means a lot.
Yes, I know your sons were very helpful as well. Talk about, was it, I think Stephen helped quite a bit, didn't he?
Yes, Stephen he was finishing up college at the time. Actually, it was his senior year in undergrad at Fisk University, which is also my alma mater. And so he was able to come home and assist me with going on doctor visits, getting me this special tea from Africa that he reminds me of to help with nausea or any other symptoms that I was feeling. Damon was also there as well. So neither one of them were actually at home at the time with me, but they were certainly with me in other ways and as frequently as they could be. So they've been continue to be a blessing to me.
Okay, I've been speaking with Judith Warren, author of More Than a Conqueror, My Journey Through Breast Cancer, available at Amazon.com in print and Kindle editions. So let me close out by asking if you want to share anything else from your perspective as a cancer survivor, an advocate, and an author.
Yeah, so the main message that I want to share is again one of encouragement, hope, inspiration, hopefully, to others who may be listening. That my message is not just for the woman diagnosed, but for also caregivers. That we can caregivers, co-workers, church members can serve with compassion and understanding for women who are going through this and to be supportive whenever possible. And for my African American sisters and other women of color, just don't delay because they'll get a letter in the mail that'll say you need to come back and kind of procrastinate or put it off, and that's not. Sometimes the sooner you know something, the better you can prepare for it in the future. So don't don't go alone and don't delay.
Don't go along and do not delay. All right. Well, thank you, Judy, for this time, and I appreciate this conversation. I know that our listeners and viewers have been informed, inspired, and again, here's the book, More Than a Conqueror, My Journey Through Breast Cancer. And the subtitle says, Insights, Awareness, and Inspiration by Judith Warren. And be sure to get the book, reach out to her on Facebook as well. And again, once again, thank you, Judy, for this time.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we have been in a great conversation with Judy Warren and talking about her book, More Than a Conqueror. And I just really want to encourage you to get the book yourself and give it to somebody. And this book has been both a resource and a gift to others to help inform them and help them navigate cancer, and even as a caregiver to support those who are going through that journey. So again, thank you, Judy, and thank you for viewing this podcast. I'm glad to be back. We've been off since the pandemic. We'll be having more conversations with more people who are making impact in our time. So God bless you, and we'll see you next time.